lips and I look to the coming crew for signs of concern, but they don't give much away. And I'm lost in money, got down liberal, unreasonable, little things we tell ourselves to get us back there, bit of me, across everywhere. So if there's nowhere for our souls to go, I wanna be so whiskey, so my whiskey, please.
the Landmark on Main Street's Gene Rimsky Theater, and to all the folks watching at home via the live stream. My name is Amanda Kowalczyk. I'm the manager of community affairs here at the Landmark Theater. Very happy to be here with you all today. For today's program, we are pleased to welcome Stuart Markus. Stuart is no stranger. Yeah, let's give him a round of applause. Stuart is no stranger here to the Landmark. He's here to perform his rollicking, feel-good show, Songs in the Key of C. That's S-E-A. I'd like to extend a warm thank you to our sponsors, Bristol Assisted Living, Manhasset Community Fund's Green Tree Foundation, the New York State Council on the Arts, and a special thanks to Serendipity for providing us with a generous tea donation. Now, please give a warm welcome to Stuart Markus.
Thank you very much. I'll sing you a song, a good song of the sea. Away, Rio. I'll sing you a song if you'll sing it with me. And we're bound for the Rio Grande. And it's away, Rio. Away, Rio. It's fare you well, you bonny fair maids. We're bound for the Rio Grande. Our ship went a-sailing out over the bar. Away, Rio. She pointed her nose for the southern star, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. And it's away, Rio. Away, Rio. It's fare you well, you bonny fair maids, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. So man the good capstan and run it around. Away, Rio. We'll haul up the anchor to this jolly sound, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. And it's away, Rio. Away, Rio. So fare you well, you bonny fair maids, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. So this is a capstan shanty. A sea shanty properly is a work song. Work songs of the sailors who worked the tall ships, when back in the 1800s everything was, well, powered by hand. Diesel engines made their entrances in the 1880s and 1890s. There was certainly no electricity, no gas engines, so everything was muscle powered, which meant often you had to have 8, 10, 12, 15 guys all hauling on a line together, or walking around the capstan. In the case of this song, to raise the anchor, the capstan was a sort of a vertically oriented winch that had bars sticking out of the top, and everyone would just grab a bar and march around. It helped if you were marching in rhythm. And they were all meant to be sing-along too, so guess what? You've all been impressed into my crew, so I expect you to sing along. I've sung the chorus 3 times now. You should know it, or at least the Away, Rio part. So shall we? Our anchor is weighed and the sails they are set. Away, Rio. The girls we are leaving we'll never forget, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. And it's away, Rio again. Away, Rio. And it's fare you well, you bonny fair maids, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. So fare thee well, all you ladies of town. Away, Rio. We've left you enough for to buy a silk gown, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. And it's away, Rio. Away, Rio. It's fare you well, all you bonny fair maids, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. It's goodbye to Sally and goodbye to Sue. Away, Rio. And those who are listening, it's goodbye to you, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. And it's away, Rio. Away, Rio. It's fare you well, all you bonny fair maids, and we're bound for the Rio Grande. And it's away, Rio, away, Rio. It's very well, all you bonny fair maids who are bound for the Rio Grande. Thank you, thank you. So, raising the anchor, as I said, involved wrapping a very, very heavy line called the anchor hawser. It was about this big around, this thick. Ran all the way down to a length of chain, and attached to the length of chain was the anchor. And the combination of rope and chain had to be 5 to 7 times as long as the water was deep. So it could take a while. So there are a number of really good songs that were known as capstan shanties used for raising the anchor. Here's one that I'm going to do. This one's a cappella, and this one, if you haven't gotten used to singing along, you'll pick up this one really easily. It's called The Dreadnought, about an actual ship that made the run between Liverpool and New York. She was the fastest ship of her day, and the name Dreadnought literally means fear nothing, Dreadnought. And it was such a famous ship that when a new class of battleship was commissioned by the British Navy in 1906, they named that class of ship after the first one of its class, the Dreadnought. And the United States Navy adopted the appellation for World War I, and all of the Arizona-class battleships of World War II were known as dreadnoughts also. And in honor of those, the Martin Guitar Company named its new, really big, powerful, loud-sounding guitars from about 1946 to 47, the Dreadnoughts, and they're still some of the most popular guitars in the Martin line. So this one is very easy. You'll pick up on it. Well, the refrain just simply goes, down, 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 derry, down. Can we try that? Down, 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 derry, down. There's a saucy wild packet, a packet of fame. She hails from New York, and the Dreadnought's her name. Bound away for the westward, where the wild winds do blow. She's a Liverpool packet, oh Lord, let her go. Derry down, 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 derry down. Now the dreadnoughts are waiting in the river Mersey for the old Independence to tow her to sea, for to round the rock light where the Mersey does flow. She's a Liverpool packet, oh Lord, let her go. Derry down, 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 derry down. Now the dreadnoughts are howling through the wild Irish Sea. Her passengers merry, their hearts full of glee. Her sailors like lions walk the decks to and fro. She's a Liverpool packet, oh Lord, let her go. Derry down, 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 derry down. Now the dreadnoughts are sailing the Atlantic so wide, with the high rolling seas all along her black sides, where the sails tautly set for the Red Cross to show. She's a Liverpool packet, oh Lord, let her go. Derry down, 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 derry down. Now the dreadnoughts are lying off Long Island shore, waiting for a pilot as we've waited before. So it's back your main topsails, board your main tacks also. She's a Liverpool packet, oh Lord, let her go. Derry down, 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 derry down. Now the dreadnoughts arrived in New York once more. So go ashore, shipmates, to the girls we adore. With our wives and our sweethearts, how merry we'll be. And drink to the dreadnought where she may be. Derry down, 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 derry down. Here's a health to the dreadnought and all of her crew. Here's to bold Captain Samuels and his officers too. You can keep your flash packets, Swallowtail and Black Bull. The dreadnought's the flyer who can outsail 'em all. Derry down, 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 derry down, derry down, 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 derry down. Thank you. That's swell. Well, before you are raising your anchor, by the way, if anybody has any questions about any of the terminology or verbiage or just general about tall ships, I actually have sailed on them. And just ask me, preferably between songs. It works better that way. But I'm happy to answer to the best of my ability. But an awful lot of words and phrases that we use today in common parlance come down from the sea, and we might not even know why until you think about what they were originally used for, and then the metaphors become pretty clear. So does anybody have any questions to start with for right now? Okay. Yes. I was a volunteer on the RMS Waiver Tree, which is at South Street Seaport Museum. I helped restore her back in 2000 and 2001. We actually got her rigged and sailed for the first time in 90 years back in 2000. We took part in OpSail 2000. We couldn't actually sail as part of the parade because we didn't have an engine. We thought they were going to let us go being pushed by a tugboat, but the Coast Guard put the kibosh on it. One of several beefs I've had with the U.S. Coast Guard, but story for another day. Yeah, she was built in 1885, dismasted in a storm off of Argentina, and spent decades as a grain hulk. And then South Street Seaport Museum bought it in 1969 or 70, and it was restored. It started falling apart again. It's restored pretty well now. They finally got a grant from the city when the city decided the museum actually knew what they were doing. So it's in regalia. I also sailed and trained on a ship called the HMS Rose, which was a replica of a British frigate that plied the waters of Long Island Sound in the 1750s and 60s. A frigate meant a sort of a lightweight, fast ship, not all that heavily armed. Its main advantage was its speed. It was considered a sixth-rate ship because it only carried 18 guns. Actually, it might have carried more than that, but it was a small ship, as ships go. But it was sent to Long Island to put an end to the smuggling trade. You see, pirates would prey on Spanish packet ships, freighter ships down in the Caribbean, and then bring their goods up to Connecticut and Rhode Island. Rhode Island especially was a hub of piracy and smuggling in the 16 and 1700s. And I have a friend whose family is from the New Haven colony. And Connecticut actually made quite a bit of money off the pirate trade also. So the British, of course, pirates weren't paying excise taxes on the goods that they captured. So the British didn't mind piracy so much if it was preying on the Spanish. It was kind of an issue when they tried to sell it. So they sent the HMS Rose to enforce the rules, and it decimated the economy of Rhode Island and hurt Connecticut significantly also. Anyways, so this ship was a replica that was built around 1980, and I sailed on her, learned how to be a tall ship sailor. She now resides in the San Francisco Maritime Museum, I believe. She went on to star in the movie Master and Commander with Russell Crowe. And because Hollywood, she actually sailed through the Panama Canal, which didn't exist at the time of the actual Rose, and ended up on the West Coast. So, another question. Yes. I wasn't in 1976, but in 1986 I did. And then there was I toured the ships in '86, and in '92 I sailed on the Rose. There was another operation sail to celebrate the 500th anniversary of Columbus' voyage. And as a member of the crew, even though I was only signed on for a week, I could go on any tall ship, so I got to visit a whole bunch of ships. And I remember the Japanese ship, the Kaisei, was serving sake out of a barrel. And I don't remember much else from that. No, I mean, there was a Russian ship there. There was an Israeli brig that, I kid you not, had a hot tub embedded in the deck. That I wasn't allowed. I was allowed on the ship, but not invited into the hot tub. But there was a Polish ship there, Argentinian. It was really something special. They were docked in Long Island and Brooklyn. Shall we move on? All right. Before you raise your anchor, you need to have at least one or two sails hoisted, or else the ship is just going to be adrift. So let's do a halyard chanty. This one is particularly well known. It survived through history because it tells that colorful story as well. It's called Blow the Man Down. And there are many versions of it this is not the cleanest version, but it's not the dirtiest version either. One thing about sailors, got to keep in mind, they were teenagers and 20-somethings for the most part. By the time they got into their 30s, their bodies were kind of starting to give out, or they decided it was time to, like, you know, start a family or find an honest trade. So their adventuresome spirit was kind of gone. So young men in their late teens and 20s were like young men now, and so they were obsessed with, like college men, drinking and women. And, well, these songs tend to reflect both of those things. So I hope you'll sing along with me. As I was a-walking down Paradise Street, to me, way, hey, below the man down, a pretty young damsel I chanced for to meet. Give me some time to blow the man down. Of the port where she hailed from, I cannot say much. To me, way, hey, blow the man down. But from her appearance, I took her for Dutch. Give me some time to blow the man down. She was broad in the kilter and bluff in the bow. Way, hey, blow the man down. I took a good look and said, how's all this now? Give me some time to blow the man down. I fired my bow chaser, a signal she knew. Way, hey, blow the man down. She clewed up her topsails and for me hove to. Give me some time to blow the man down. Her flag was 3 colors, her masthead was low. Way, hey, blow the man down. And yard arm to sea we did go. Give me some time to blow the man down. She took me upstairs to her lily-white room. Way, hey, blow the man down. And all through the evening we danced and we spooned. Give me some time to blow the man down. 'Twas up to her cabin, she piped me aboard. Way, hey, blow the man down. And there on the bed I cut loose with me sword. Give me some time to blow the man down. But just as McCutter was forging ahead, way, hey, blow the man down, she shouted, my husband, and jumped out of bed. Give me some time to blow the man down. He was 7 feet tall, had a chest like a horse. Way, hey, blow the man down. And straight for my jawbone he plotted his course. Give me some time to blow the man down. He rattled me rigging, he kicked in me staves. Way, hey, blow the man down. I flew down the stairs like a ship on the waves. Give me some time to blow the man down. I chanced on a packet ship happening by. Way, hey, blow the man down. And when I awoke, I was bound for Shanghai. Give me some time to blow the man down. So come all you laddies who follow the sea. Way, hey, blow the man down. And never pay heed to what pretty girls say. Give me some time to blow the man down. You can see how the rhythm would lend itself to hauling on a line. By the way, there was an issue. I mentioned San Francisco. San Francisco is a major maritime port, still is, but certainly was in the 1800s. It was a sheltered harbor, and so it became the prime port for the China trade. The problem with the China trade is that it's a really, really long journey, and sailors, didn't want to be away that long. So the ships all over were having a hard time recruiting crew. So they would turn to men called crimps. Usually crimps were either tavern owners or denizens of local taverns who were all too happy to buy a sailor around because they were so friendly, and then slip something into that drink. And when the sailor awoke, he was on a ship and was now part of the crew, bound for China. They called that being shanghaied. Now, the British Royal Navy had a similar problem recruiting sailors, and so they would turn to a similar thing at a sailor's tavern, and being a working sailor didn't pay all that well, but at least you had some liberty. As you're part of His Majesty's crew, your liberty was much more greatly restricted, and there was always the possibility that you'd have to do battle and get shot at. So the British Navy, would if impressment, i.e. the draft, was very unpopular, they would turn to it if need be. But if they could get away with gentle persuasion, they were. So they also would buy a sailor a drink at a bar and give him the talk about how great and patriotic it would be to serve in the King's Navy. And, well, if the sailor said yes, he would be given a shilling as his first advance, and that sealed the deal. However, if it wasn't working, they would be known to slip a shilling into the sailor's glass of ale. And when he got to the last drop and went like this, the shilling fell and hit him in the face. "You've accepted the King's shilling. Welcome to the Navy." Which is why if you ever see a pewter mug from back in the day, you might notice it usually has a glass bottom. That's so a sailor could look and make sure there wasn't a coin in the bottom that would get him impressed. Okay, so say you've got your sails up, you've hauled it up. There's still a little bit of work that needs to be done, which is to take the stretch out of the line. The lines were hemp, manila hemp. And if you didn't get all the stretch out, they would stretch out on their own, and then the sails would start to sag, and you didn't want that to happen. So there was a number of shanties called short drag shanties that were made just for like that burst of energy to get that stretch out of the line. Here's one called Haul Away Joe. This one's very easy. The refrain is, "Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe." Got that? Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. When I was just a little boy or so, me mother told me, way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. That if I didn't kiss the girls, me lips would all grow moldy. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way, haul away, we'll all haul together. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way, haul away, we'll haul for better weather. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. King Louis was the king of France before the Revolution. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. But then he got his head cut off, which spoiled his constitution. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way, haul away, we'll all haul together. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way, haul away, we'll haul for better weather. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. St. Patrick was a decent man, he came from honest people. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. He built the church in Dublin town and on it put a steeple. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way, haul away, we'll all haul together. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way, haul away, we'll haul for better weather. Way, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. That's well. Speaking of Joe, British sailors were given a daily ration of rum up until 1970 or so. In the American Navy, that daily ration of rum was cut off in about 1918 by the Secretary of the Navy, Josephus Daniels. He was not a very nice man. He was very austere. He was very racist, which meant he fit in very well in the administration of Woodrow Wilson. That he ran several newspapers that just, if an American Negro had committed a crime, no matter how minor it was, that was the huge headline. But he declared that the U.S. Navy should be dry, which made him very unpopular with the sailors. Now, the sailors drank rum for several reasons. One, well, because getting a little bit buzzed was enjoyable. But on a cold night, alcohol, it's not the best way to keep your hands warm, but it will increase, the circulation to your fingers and toes. So they would turn to that. And of course, having a little bit of a buzz on made one a little bit less fearful of things like working aloft. Again, not recommended, but the sailors liked it. So when Josephus Daniels declared that the Navy should be dry, the sailors switched to coffee. And in their resentment, they named it for him, which is why to this day a cup of coffee is sometimes called a cup of Joe. So drinking could be a little bit of a problem, as as, well, you'll hear in this song. This is another halyard shanty. And the refrain, way hey and up she, usually the rum was served at lunch and dinner time. And the daily ration was a half a pint neat. So that's 1 cup, 8 ounces of rum. The problem that they would have is some sailors would save it up and get very drunk, but I'll tell you what the solution that they came up with after the song. So this is a song you've probably heard called What Shall We Do with a Drunken Sailor? It could be a real problem, and what I like about it is that the treatments for the sailor get worse and worse as the song goes on, and can you figure his crewmates are getting more and more annoyed that he's sleeping it off while they're doing more work. What shall we do with a drunken sailor? What shall we do with a drunken sailor? What shall we do with a drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. The first one's not too bad. Throw him in the longboat till he's sober, throw him in the longboat till he's sober, throw him in the longboat till he's sober, early in the morning. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. But as they get a bit more annoyed, they come up with other things. Shave him in the belly with a rusty razor, shave him in the belly with a rusty razor, shave him in the belly with a rusty razor, early in the morning. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. Heave him by the legs in a running bowling, heave him by the legs in a running bowling, heave him by the legs in a running bowling, early in the morning. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. Throw him in the scuppers with a stovepipe on him, throw him in the scuppers with a stovepipe on him, throw him in the scuppers with a stovepipe on him, early in the morning. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. Scuppers being like sort of a drain vent for water that washed up on the deck. And I believe the stovepipe refers to a stovepipe hat, which would have made him look kind of ridiculous. That's the kind of hat that Abraham Lincoln wore. I don't think they'd actually take the stovepipe from the ship's galley and put it on top of him. Anyways, the worst treatment of all. Throw him in bed with the captain's daughter, throw him in bed with the captain's daughter, throw him in bed with the captain's daughter, early in the morning. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. What's so bad about that? Have you seen the captain's daughter? Have you seen the captain's daughter? Have you seen the captain's daughter, early in the morning? Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. That's what you do with a drunken sailor, that's what you do with a drunken sailor, that's what you do with a drunken sailor, early in the morning. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. Thank you. So the British Navy did have a problem with sailors saving up their rum and getting really, really drunk at some inopportune time. So an admiral named Edward Vernon came up with a solution. Ships would carry water, of course, but the water would go bad sitting in a cask. It wasn't exactly purified in any way. So the water would start to taste bad, and bacteria would grow, and that would make the sailors sick. So he actually came up with 2 problems at once. He would dilute the rum into the water, 1 part rum to 3 parts water. And that would, well, it would kill the bacteria that was growing. But if it sat for too long, it would go bad anyways. The alcohol would evaporate. So it kind of forced the sailors to drink their daily ration as it was issued rather than saving it up. And Might add a few spices to give it some additional flavor, and then one other important component. He'd put in some lemon juice or lime juice. Now this was very important because one plague of the tall ships was scurvy, which is a disease that was called gangrene of the gums, and it was caused by a lack of vitamin C. It starts with your gums rotting and your teeth falling out, and as it progresses, your eyes become sunken, and old wounds kind of open up again, wounds that had long healed open up again, and eventually the sailors would kind of fall into like a stupor over it. And now they didn't know what vitamin C was back then, but they knew that if sailors got a daily dose of some sort of citrus fruit, which just happened to be high in vitamin C, it would ward off scurvy. So most ships would carry a supply of limes, and that's why British sailors were known as limeys. So this concoction, so Admiral Vernon used to wear a cloak made out of a coarse material called grogran, or as the British sailors pronounce it, grogram, and his nickname was Old Grog. So they named it after him. They called it Grog. And to this day, if someone is walking around a little off balance, not falling down drunk, but a little off kilter, they might say that he's groggy. Speaking of rum, Long Island was known as a rum runner's haven. Rum runners would have ships back during the Prohibition. This was. They would send ships down to Cuba, which was a friendly country at the time, and bring up rum. And they'd sail to just outside the 3-mile limit. And motorboats would come out, this was in the 1920s, and pick up as much rum as they could and bring it back in. Freeport was home to it was called Freeport Point Shipyard, run by the Skopenick family. They made fast boats for the Coast Guard and for the rum runners. They made 15 boats for the Coast Guard, for the Revenue Service, and they made 30 for rum runners. And they were restaurants in Freeport famous for the rum. They were revenue officers enforcing the prohibition who had side businesses of selling rum. Claudio's out in Greenport was famous for rum running also. Fully a third of the rum, the liquor that made it into New York City, came via Long Island. So Bill McCoy was the best known of the rum runners. He was known for bringing up only quality rum. He had a big schooner called the Arethusa, and that is because he was known for the quality of the rums that he would bring up from Cuba. It is believed that is where the expression "the real McCoy" came from. So let's do a song about, this is a capstan shanty, from the point of view of a neophyte sailor who's just signed on board a ship, and he looks on and he sees 3 masts, each with 4 or 5 sails on them, each sail having up to 17 lines controlling it, having no idea what he's going to do. This is a song called "Where Am I to Go?" And it's "Where am I to go, me Johnnies? Where am I to go? To me way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go. It's where am I to go, me Johnnies? Where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? It's way up on the topsail yard, that's where you're bound to go. To me way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go. It's way up on the topsail yard to take the topsail in. For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? And it's where am I to go, me Johnnies? Where am I to go? To me way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go. It's where am I to go, me Johnnies? Where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? It's way up on the royal yard, that's where you're bound to go. To me way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go. It's way up on the royal yard, the royal fort is stowed. For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? And it's where am I to go, me Johnnies? Where am I to go? to me way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go, it's where am I to go, me Johnny's where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? It's all the way around Cape Horn, that's where you're bound to go. To me way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go, it's all the way around Cape Horn amidst the ice and snow. For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? And it's where am I to go, me Johnnies, where am I to go? Chile way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go, it's where am I to go, me Johnnies, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? And it's where am I to go, me Johnnies, where am I to go? To me way, hey, hey. Oh, the roll and go, it's where am I to go, me Johnnies, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and it's where am I to go? Thank you. So think about it. A tall ship, a vessel was defined by its rig. A ship with two masts with horizontal, square sails on each was a brig. If it had square sails on its foremast and fore and aft sails, like a typical modern sailboat, on its mizzen mast, it was called a brigantine. If it had all fore and aft sails and two masts at least, it was called a schooner. If it had just one mast, it was a sloop. If it had two masts with square sails, the fore and main mast had square sails, but the aft mast or mizzen mast had fore and aft, it was called a bark. If it was reversed, square sails on the foremast, but fore and aft sails on the main and mizzen, it was a barkentine. And it wasn't actually a ship unless it had square sails on all three masts. So a ship was very, very tightly defined back then. But as ships got bigger and bigger, they'd put more and more sails on each mast because they needed more and more power. So the lower sail on any mast, lower square sail, was called the course. So you had the forecourse, you had the main course, that was the tastiest sail. Then above that, you had the topsail, the foretopsail, the main topsail, the mizzen. The mizzen sometimes had a course, but sometimes they started with the topsail. But the topsail wasn't the highest sail on the ship because they didn't want to confuse people. So whatever the next sail up was called the topsail. Above the topsail was the topgallant sail, or sometimes called the to'gansel. And above that, you might have a royal. And above that, you might even have a skysail. And on some of the maximum clippers, you might even have a moonsail. Above that. But just to make things more confusing, topsails were usually the biggest sail on the ship, the deepest, and so they would split them. So you'd have a lower topsail and an upper topsail, and then the to'gallant, and then the royal, and then the skysail. Every sail could have between 12 and 17 lines controlling it. The line hoisting it was called a halyard, so you might have a fore upper topsail halyard, or a main royal halyard. That had to be memorized where it was. Then the lines that pulled the lower outer corners of the sail out to the yardarm below were called the sheets. So you could have a fore upper topsail port sheet and a fore upper topsail starboard sheet. The ones that brought them back up for furling were called the clew lines. If you didn't know where those were, you were clueless. And you might get a command to go man the fore royal starboard sheet, or the fore or clewlin. And in fact, there are other lines that gathered up the sail called buntlins. And on a typical sail, you'd have an inner buntlin and an outer buntlin on each sail, on each side of the sail. So you might get a command along lines of, go man the fore upper topsail starboard inner buntlin. And you had to know where it was. This is where we get the expression learning the ropes. Now, each line had a standing part, and of course the far end that the standing part was made off to the spar. The other end would be made off to a bit, either on the deck or on the ship or on the dock. So that was called the bitter end. All right, we're going to do a song. I'm going to invite my friend Jamie. She's from Sturbridge, Massachusetts. She is a board member of the Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival Society. Or at least she was. Are you still on the board? Or? Okay. And she leads a monthly, or hosts a monthly, why don't you come on this side? I'll put the guitar over here. Monthly online open shanty sing done via Zoom. And she's going to join me for a song called Patty Lay Back. This was also a capstan shanty, but it's a little bit more complicated. But it only works in case if people are singing along. So she will lead you on the singing along. Rather than just one refrain, it's sort of a dynamic refrain line. It changes, but you get your clues, okay? So, and this is typical among sea shanties in that one of their functions was to give the sailors a chance to complain and not get punished for it. Blow off a little steam, as it were. So why don't you come over here? Okay. This is called Patty Lay Back. Every sailor, according to the shanties, was either named Jack, John, or Patty. Once there was a great demand for sailors. For the colonies, for Frisco, and for France. I signed aboard a limey bark, the Hotspur. Got paralytic drunk on my advance. Patty lay back, take in the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship's station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. 'Twas on the quarter-deck that I foresaw 'em. Such an ugly bunch you'd never seen before. The skipper had slipped the Shanghai crew, a Dutchman. It made me poor heart feel sick and sore. Patty lay back, take in the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship's station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. 'Twas Germans and Africans and Russians, and Johnny Crapos just across from France. And most of them never spoke a word of English, but answered to the call of months advance. Patty lay back, take in the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship's station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. You got that sing-along when now you'll figure it out. Oh, no, wait, they're only halfway through. Took a long time to raise the anchor, remember? Let's see. Now some of the other sailors had been drinking, and I myself was heavy on the booze. I sat down on me old sea chest a-thinking to turn into me bunk and take a snooze. Patty lay back, take in the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship's station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. I asked a mate to which a watch is mine, oh. Says he, I'll show you which a watch is which. He blew me down and kicked me hard astern, oh, and called me a dirty, lousy son of a fish. Patty lay back, take in the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship's station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. I quickly made me mind up I should jump her, leave the beggar and get a job ashore. I swam across the bay, I went and left her, and in the English bar I found a nice girl. Patty lay back, take in the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship's station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. I was on the windy morning in December. I found that all me money it was spent, and where the hell it went I don't remember. So once again, then off to sea I went. Patty lay back, taking the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. Patty lay back, taking the slack. Take a turn around the capstan, heave a pole, about ship station, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. That's well. Thank you, Jamie. So does anybody have any questions? Whole lot of terms just got thrown. Does everybody know where Valparaiso is? Not the one in Indiana. It's on the west coast of Chile, another major port city. Venezuela and Chile were known for a chief export. It was very handy as a fertilizer. It was euphemistically called guano. Does anybody know what guano is? It is, yes, it is seagull poop. But it was high in nitrogen, so it made a good fertilizer. The waiver tree at South Street Seaport in her later days was a guano-carrying vessel. You can imagine what it smelled like. Yes, ma'am. Was it? Oh, yes, nitrates, of course. Yes, indeed, indeed. Any other questions? Okay. Well, work was something always needing to be done on the ship. The ships were made out of wood and hemp and iron, and they constantly needed to be maintained. Anything that was made out of metal was subject to rust. Most things were made out of brass to ward it off. But you had ultraviolet rays from the sun beating on the wood and the rigging, so the rigging constantly had to be coated. Well, the standing rigging, which supported the masts, had to be constantly coated with tar. And by the end of the day, the sailors were coated in it also, which is why British sailors became known as tars. And then there was caulking between the planks, which was made out of oakum, which is basically hemp fibers from old lines that had worn out. And then pitch would be poured from like a little kettle on top of the oakum between it to caulk between the woods. There was one nasty seam. That was the seam between the weather deck, the uppermost deck, and the side of the ship, the gunwale. And that was called the devil seam. The only way to caulk it was to hang out overboard in what was called a bosun's chair. And you're basically swinging along in high seas trying to pound caulking into this seam. And it was a very vulnerable position to be in, and which is why now if you're in an untenable state, you might say you're between the devil and the deep blue sea. Navigation was something that was always done. The captain had to know how to navigate, but often he would have someone to assist him with it. And the ship's navigator, well, you needed to be able to tell time to know how far you'd traveled. It was called a chip log. The speed was noted. They would throw, basically it was, they called it a chip. It was like 1/6 of a disc to which a line was attached, and the line would pay out as it would create a drag in the sea. And there were knots along the line, and it was timed for a minute, and then the number of knots that paid out was counted, and that was how the ship's speed was calculated, which is why nautical speed is calculated in knots. A knot is 1 nautical mile per hour. A nautical mile is slightly more than 1 statutory land mile. But when you're on a sailing ship, chances are you don't have the wind right behind you. Chances are it's crosswise to you, which means that as the ship is moving forward, it's also getting blown slightly sideways. Now, on a ship, the directions are starboard and port, which meant the right and left if you're facing forward. And of course, the bow is at the front, the stern was in the back, but it was sometimes more practical to talk about the windward side and the leeward side. Windward side obviously faced the wind, leeward was away from it, or leeward. And so as a ship was going forward, it was also going sideways, which meant you had to allow for leeway in your navigational calculations. That's where we get that expression from. You'd always have men up at the front of the ship. The ship steered from the rear. That's where the rudder was. You'd always have 1 or 2 guys manning the ship's wheel, running the rudder. You always would have a couple of guys up at the bow also keeping watch for small boats, for navigational hazards, for other things. They were on the bow watch, but of course the bow usually caught the brunt of the spray coming in. And on a cold night, if you got a real chill from the sea spray, you might get sick. And so the euphemistic expression from that was you were under the weather. The guys in the back of the boat didn't have it so good either. If you were in a heavy following sea, that sea could crash over your stern, and that was difficult. If the rudder came out of the water for a moment, there was just that moment when you didn't have any steerage, and the ship might actually start to slide sideways a little bit, in which case the helmsman would have to wrestle it back. That could be exhausting. Well, the sea crashing over the back of the ship, that was called, well, on a Navy ship it was called the quarterdeck. That was officers' quarters. On a general ship, it was called the poop deck. It comes from the same Latin term pupus, which means rear. But that was called getting pooped, and an exhausted helmsman would said he was pooped from all that activity. That's another word we still use. I'm going to do a song that was that's a sort of a whaling voyage in a nutshell. Long Island was home to several whaling fleets. There was a fleet at Cold Spring Harbor. There's still the Cold Spring Harbor Whaling Museum there. There was one at Sag Harbor. Northport and Port Jefferson were known for building ships. And whaling was an important industry. And wow. Hey, is it okay if I go a little bit over on time? I'm having fun. Okay. This is a whaling trip in a nutshell. And like I said, sea shanties gave sailors a chance to complain, and this song does that. Okay. It's called "Blow Ye Winds." This is a fairly well-known one. If you're a fan of the Kingston Trio, they did it. Advertised in Boston, New York, and Buffalo. 500 brave Americans are wailing for to go, singing, blow ye winds in the morning, blow ye winds, hi-oh, all the way you're running gear, and blow ye winds, hi-oh. They'll talk about them clipper ships are running in and out. They'll swear you'll catch 500 whales before you're 6 months out, singing, blow your winds in the morning, blow your winds, hi-oh, all the way you're running gear, and blow your winds, hi-oh. But as for our provisions, we don't have half enough. A little bag of stinking beef, a little bag of duff, singing, blow your winds in the morning, blow your winds, hi-oh, all the way you're running gear, and blow your winds, hi-oh. So now we are to sea, me boys, the wind comes on to blow. One half the watch is sick on deck, the other sick below, singing, blow your winds in the morning, blow your winds, hi-oh, all the way you're running gear, and blow your winds, hi-oh. The captain's on the court, the cooper's on the vice bench, making iron poles. The mate is on the main hatch, cursing all our souls, singing, blow your winds in the morning, blow your winds, hi-oh, all the way you're running gear, and blow your winds, hi-oh. The captain's on the quarterdeck, just squinting at the sails, when up aloft the lookout spots a mighty school of whales, singing, blow your winds in the morning, blow your winds, hi-oh, all the way you run gear, and blow your winds, hi-oh. Then lower down the boats, me boys, and after him we'll travel. But if you get too near his flukes, I'll send you to the devil, singing, blow your winds in the morning, blow your winds, hi-oh, all the way you're running gear, and blow your winds, hi-oh. And now we've got Now we've got him turned up, boys, we'll bring him alongside. We'll lower down our blubber hooks and rob him of his hide, singing, blowy winds in the morning, blowy winds I-ho, all the way run gear and blowy winds I-ho. And when we're done, our ship made fast, we're through with all our sailing. A winding glass around, we'll pass it. Damn this blubber welling, singing, blowy winds I-ho, boys, blowy winds I-ho, all the way run gear and blowy winds I-ho, singing, blowy winds in the morning, blowy winds I-ho, all the way running gear and blowy winds I-ho. Thank you. So the thing about whaling, it was a major industry, but it was a terrible one to be in. If you wanted to go to sea, it was the worst way. It was filthy work. It was dangerous. It was bloody. You'd be away for not a few months at a time, but often a couple of years at a time. And of course, you were killing living creatures, and it didn't. And on top of all of that, it didn't pay very well. And the shipping companies, bless their hearts, were always looking for ways to recapture some of the money they were paying their sailors. So there would always be a ship's store on board. So they're given a daily ration of rum. They were given food, maybe a little bit of a clothing allowance. But for anything else a sailor might need, toiletries, liquor other than rum, other clothing items, boots, he had to buy them basically at the ship's store, which, like the company store on the railroad lines or in the coal mining towns, would always charge twice as much as you could get it on shore for. And if a sailor wasn't careful, he could blow his entire paycheck there. I'm going to do a song that really paints what the picture of whaling was like. It's called Wings of a Goney. A goney meant an albatross or another type of soaring bird that could spend long hours traveling great distances, just like a hawk, just kind of riding the updrafts, and which is why they were seen out at sea quite a bit. If I had the wings of a goney, boys, I would spread them and fly home. I would leave old Greenland's icy grounds, for of right whales there are none. And the weather's rough and the winds do blow, and there's little comfort here. I'd sooner be snug in a Deptford pub, drinking of strong beer. Well, a man must be mad or wanting money bad to venture catching whales, for he may be drowned when the whalefish turns around, or his head be smashed by the tail. Well, the work seems grand to a young green hand, and his heart is high when he goes. In a very short burst, he'd sooner hear a curse than a cry of "there she blows." All hands on deck, now for God's sake, move swiftly if you can. And he stumbles on deck, so dizzy and sick, for his life he don't give a damn. And high overhead the great fluke spread, and the mate gives the whale the iron. And soon the blood in a purple flood from his spout all comes a-flying. These trials we bear now for long years, till the flying jib points towards home. We're supposed for our toil to get a bonus for the oil, and an equal share of the bone. But we go to the agent to settle for our trip and find we have cause to repent. For we've slaved away 4 years of our lives and earned about £3.10. Thank you. So the whalers they got a percentage of the ship's profits. It was, and the percentage you got was called the lay. It was a fraction. So if you were in like the 200th or 300th lay, you did pretty well. If you were in the 700th lay, not so well. And of course, sailors didn't know this. They didn't quite understand about fractions, so they might think, oh, I'm in the 900th lay. I'm doing better than the guy in the 400th lay. No. By the way, the lines that worked the sails worked in pairs. Like I told you about the sheet that pulls the corner down and the clew that brings it up. The halyard would raise the sail, the downhaul would bring it down. To set the sails to the wind, the lines are called braces, and they were attached to the end of the yard arms, and they would pull it this way. So when one line had to be pulled on or hauled on, the opposite line had to be slacked. Slacking, of course, was a much easier job to do than hauling, which is why someone who doesn't like to work very hard might be called a slacker. Now, in the maybe 1830s or so, men's fashion styles were changing. The norm had been the knickerbocker, which was buttoned or tied just below the knee, and you'd had stockings on, long stockings underneath. But a new fashion emerged in men's hosiery where the lower ends weren't attached to anything. They hung slack, which is why a pair of pants might be called a pair of slacks. What else? Let's sing a song about a pirate, shall we? A pirate who is known on Long Island, and he's probably still rolling in his grave at being called a pirate some 300 years or more later. His name was William Kidd, and he lived in the year 1699. He was living well. He was a semi-retired sea captain. He'd invested in several ships. He was living in New York City with his bride, who was in her 20s when he was in his 50s. He was a happy man, but the colonial governor came to him with a plan. There are pirates in the Indian Ocean. We're going to give you a privateer's license or a letter of marque. Now, a privateer was sort of a licensed pirate. He could capture ships, merchant ships, but only of the nations that the country was at war with. So during the War of Independence, John Paul Jones was a privateer. He went after British ships. Most of the pirates of the Caribbean actually were privateers. They'd been given a letter of marque to go after Spanish ships, because Britain was always at war with Spain or France or both. So he was given a letter of marque to hunt down pirates in the Indian Ocean. Now, the deal with if you were a privateer is that, like a pirate ship, the crew all shared out the booty equally. The captain got 2 shares, the mates got a share and a half. If you were a privateer, 25% off the top went to the Admiralty, but still it was a pretty good deal because you knew you weren't going to be hanged for piracy if you privateered properly. In the case of Captain Kidd, the scheme involved some investors. So the proposal was 50% to the investors, then 25% to the Admiralty, and then the rest to the crew. This made it rather hard for him to find crew among the pirates of New York City, so he kind of stopped talking about the 50% share to the investors. He got his crew, and they set sail for London first before going to the Indian Ocean. And they're sailing up the Thames River, and a Royal Navy ship was sailing down. And the proper thing to do would have been to fire a gun in salute. Instead, his crew of New York pirates mooned the Royal Navy ship. In 1699, this was considered a supreme act of insolence and disrespect. So this did not set him well with the Admiralty. They set sail, resupplied, set sail for the Indian Ocean, and realized when they got there that pirate ships were mostly already eradicated, and targets were few and far between, and his ship was grumbling because, don't forget, they got paid a share of the ship's profits. So they're grumbling, and he's worried about a mutiny, and he's in a bad mood, and his gunner, William Moore, mouths off to him and at the wrong moment, and Captain Kidd picks up an empty wooden deck bucket and clangs the man over the head with it, and the man died. Now, a captain could get away with such a punishment. Normally it would have to entail a court-martial for insolence or mutiny. By the way, the punishments on board a ship, most common was flogging. But it wasn't just an ordinary whip. You see, what they do is they unlay a length of rope. And rope was made, there'd be 3 strands twisted together, and then those 3 combined strands would be twisted together. So it'd be unlaid into 9 individual strands. This was called a cat o' nine tails. And if there was goings-on going on among the crew, they'd tell each other, well, be careful, don't let the cat out of the bag. The cat o' nine tails be carried in a burlap bag, obviously. Anyways, the most common punishment for piracy was hanging. And, well, Captain Kidd knew his crew was getting really, really angry, and he was getting desperate. And finally, at long length, they saw a ship that they could tell was laden down heavily with cargo, and they said, okay, we're going to go after it. We're going to get our prize. So they captured the ship. Turns out the ship was owned by an Indian mogul who had connections in high places. But he wasn't going to tell his crew that they couldn't keep their booty. So he had one little saving grace. The ship was carrying false French papers. Lots of ships carried false papers, so if you're attacked by a privateer, you could say, wait, I have my papers saying I'm with a friendly country. In this case, it worked the opposite way. He saw the false French papers. He figured if he's court-martialed, he can say, wait, they were carrying French papers. How was I to know just because they looked Indian and spoke Hindi that they were, Indian rather than French? So he sails back to New York, but finds that there's a warrant out for his arrest because word had gotten out about, the fuzzy math, shall we say, and the mooning incident. But he's confident of his acquittal at court-martial. He buries his treasure on Gardiner's Island, sails back to London, but word has reached there. First of all, the pirates are all gone. There was a general proclamation of amnesty for pirates, but excluded him because this mogul had friends in high places. And he stands court-martial, and he gives his false French papers that should win him acquittal to his lawyer, but somehow they disappeared. So he was convicted of piracy. He was hanged. Poor Captain Kidd. About a decade ago, some researchers were going through the archives of the Royal Navy. They found those false French papers. So here's a sad story. Oh, my name is Captain Kidd. As I sailed, oh, my name is Captain Kidd. As I sailed, oh, my name is Captain Kidd. God's laws that I forbid, and most wickedly I did. As I sailed, oh, my parents taught me well. As I sailed, oh, my parents taught me well. As I sailed, oh, my parents taught me well to shun the gates of hell, but against them I rebelled. As I sailed, oh, I murdered William Moore. As I sailed, oh, I murdered William Moore. As I sailed, oh, I murdered William Moore and left him in his gore 10,000 leagues from shore. As I sailed, oh, and being cruel still. As I sailed, oh, and being cruel still. As I sailed, oh, and being cruel still, the gunner I did kill, and his precious blood did spill. As I sailed, my repentance lasted not. As I sailed, my repentance lasted not. As I sailed, my repentance lasted not. My vows I soon forgot. Damnation was my lot. As I sailed, to the execution dock. I must go to the execution dock. I must go to the execution dock, put my head upon the block, no more the laws to mock, as I sail, as I sail. Oh, my name is Captain Kidd, as I sailed, as I sailed. Oh, my name is Captain Kidd, as I sailed. Oh, my name is Captain Kidd, God's laws that I forbid, and most wickedly I did, as I sailed, as I sailed. Thank you. So, as you might guess, you might have seen paintings. Fighting between two ships was done with them pulling up next to each other, trying to maneuver and hit each other with broadsides from their full length of cannon. If a captain was skilled and strategic, he could cross the bow or the stern of the enemy ship and just rake her decks with a broadside from his cannon. But cannons were a tricky thing. They were 1.5 tons, 2 tons of cast iron. They were mounted on carriages so they could recoil properly and be reloaded. And the idea, if possible, was to disable the enemy's ship, not sink it so much, because if you could disable it by firing into the rigging, destroying all the rigging, the lines, the ship couldn't maneuver, you could then maneuver up to yours and just swing across, like in the Errol Flynn movies with cutlasses, and just mow down anyone that was there until the ship surrendered, and the ship surrendered by lowering its flag. Occasionally, to effect this, they would use superheated cannonballs that were heated in a fire, trying to cause a fire on board the ship or set the rigging on fire. You had all this pine tar on it. That was called hot shot. If a cannon broke loose, the cannons were lashed with heavy ropes to the sides of the ship to iron fittings. But sometimes if the side of the ship got shot away enough, a cannon might break loose. You can just imagine what kind of damage a cannon rolling around on the rolling seas on a wooden ship could do. That's where we get the expression, he's a loose cannon. One other interesting thing, now the ship's cannons were pretty big around. When a Navy ship was in port, if they were worried about the sailors deserting, they might not allow them to go ashore, but they could send word for their wives. They might be allowed on shore, on liberty, but they were expected to sleep back on board the ship. But they were allowed to bring wives or women they said were their wives on board with them for a little bit of company. In such a circumstances, instead of sleeping in a hammock, 2 people sleeping in a hammock is a little difficult. They might bed down between the ship's cannons. Had a little bit of privacy that way. And if such a situation produced a male offspring, he was called a son of a gun. All right, I'm going to do one more song, and this one was requested by Ryan or Dante, who are running the sound here. So I hand to them. It sounds really good to me on stage, and I appreciate it. So let's have a hand for them. And thanks to Amanda and everyone here. It's every time I've performed here, I've just loved it. This is called Leave Her Johnny, and it was typically the last song sung on a ship. When a ship came into port, before there were tugboats, what they would do is maneuver the ship as close to the pier head as they dared, and then quickly lower the sails, drop the anchor to stop it, and then throw or row a line across to the pier head, and then put the other end of the line on the ship's capstan and sort of winch the ship up to the pier head. They could even move a ship from pier to pier using this process. It was called warping. And so this would typically be sung during that process, and it was a little bit bittersweet. As much as they complained about the ship, it was their home. Some of them would be leaving. Some of them had friends that they just wouldn't see again if they went to another ship, or that was the end of their contract. So this is called Leave Her Johnny, and it's a beautiful song, so I'll invite you to sing along. Oh, the times were hard and the wages were low. Leave her, Johnny, leave her, And now once more ashore we'll go, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. She would not wear and she would not stay. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. She shipped great seas both night and day, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. It was rotten meat and weevily bread. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. It's eat or starve, the old man said, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. And the winds were foul and the work was hard. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. From the Liverpool dock to the Brooklyn yard, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. And I thought I heard the old man say, leave her, Johnny, leave her. Tomorrow you will get your pay, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. And now it's time to say goodbye. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. The old pier head is drawing nigh, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Thank you very much. If anybody would like a little glossary of nautical terms that have become part of the common parlance, I have them over there. Just come over. You can get one for free. My name is Scuttlebutt Stu Markus. It's been a pleasure singing and playing for all of you. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you once again, Amanda.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And if anybody else has any questions about any of the terminology or anything else having to do with tall ships, I'll be right over here by the CDs.
Not only wonderful music, but quite an education. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. And please do join us for our next afternoon tea, which will be on May 10th. Kate Beckman will be doing her program Swing Era and the Great American Songbook. Please join us. And there's flyers in the lobby if you'd like to take one with you about our upcoming shows. Have a great day, everyone.